Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. And as we mentioned, or if you haven't noticed, it is 4 p.m. on Thursday after a few days of a whole lot of interaction and walking and coffee and drinks and food. And so we're probably going to have a fairly relaxed conversation here. Um, Feel free to jump in. I guess I'll go ahead and start us off. Let's. My name is Rebecca Christ. I'm program coordinator for shared collection resources at ASERL, which is the Association of Southeastern Research Libraries. With me today is an amazing panel of ASERL member library volunteers. And let me get off of the AA.com site and onto my actual notes. Sitting next to me is the amazing Christy Pascal, who is head of acquisitions at the University of South Carolina, Alice Doherty, who is Associate Dean for Collections and Technical Services at the University of Alabama, and the inestimable Peggy Kane from Licensing and Scholarly Communication Librarian at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. We're going to talk a little bit today about our ASERL 11 licensing review project, which is an interesting little project we've been running for a couple of years. But first, I'm going to tell you a quick bit about ASERL. ASERL is an organization it's a library consortium of 38 academic research libraries across the Southeast. I tell people it's from Boston down to Miami, over to New Orleans, up to Arkansas. So anything in that region is one of ours. They have similar collection needs because they're all academic research libraries, but also there's a big range in the size of the budgets, the number of FTEs, the areas that they concentrate their studies in. So there's a lot of overlap in the collections, but also a lot of distinction between them. I'm just real quick going to ask you all some questions. They don't know that I'm going to do this. How many of you are librarians in a university library? Most of you. How many of you are vendors? Over on the left. And how many of you are consortial folk? All right. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
How many of you engage in licensing as part of what you do? Awesome. Wow. Thank you.
Excellent. This is where I don't remember what our next slide is, and I don't have them up in front of me.
Big green button.
Big green button.
Point it at the TV. Should be code of conduct.
Oh, it's the code of conduct. The Charleston Library Conference has a code of conduct. We ask that you be respectful and kind and nice to each other and not be mean. You can read the full text on the website, should you so choose. Hit the green button. Christy.
It's not working. All right. Who is ASERL?
Of course. So Thursday at 4 p.m. of the conference, and everyone's like, I got drinks on.
All right. Thank you. Woohoo, thank you.
Okay, so who is ASERL? I just gave you a little bit about us. We are a consortium that's been around since 1956, 57, somewhere in there, so we've been around for a while. I've only been there a couple of years. They all precede me in this organization. And in 2021, the ASERL Licensing Principles Project it arose from the ASERL Big Deal Community of Practice, as I understand it, yes. Which was co-chaired by Jennifer Mesnick at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Lois Kuiper Rushing. Thank you for pronouncing that for me. From Louisiana State in early 2021. And those librarians and a couple of groups of ASERL library representatives were created two groups to draft the licensing principles and a peer review group to review the drafted principles, which were then adopted by the ASERL board in November of 2021. So we put these principles out. There are 11 principles available on our website. We do have that bit.ly link, and will later be a QR code if you want to see that. But basically, it was 11 principles guiding licensing language around areas like patron privacy and author rights and accessibility, and there's 11 of them. There's a whole list.
There's 11.
And they had done all this work to create sort of like, this is the language that we'd like to see in licenses, and why we'd want to see that. And the question came up about, well, we've put this out there, now what? So in 2023, the group met to sort of assess the adoption of these principles in actual publishers agreements, and how are these principles actually being enacted. So we convened a group and started building. Sorry, I just got completely distracted by the conversation next door. To evaluate whether our principles are currently in practice, and to illuminate areas where libraries and publishers can simplify licensing negotiations by referring to communally acceptable language that reinforces our shared values. And so we created a couple of rubrics. This was a very long and very fraught process to create a way of, how are we going to measure these things? What are we looking for? How does it have to be, this language appears in here exactly? What if it doesn't quite? What if we'll talk some more about all of that. But we developed a couple of rubrics to look at it and move through it, and then started asking publishers if they would give us copies of their licenses for us to review. I'm gonna click to the next slide. So that's how it all started. And I'm going to take us back. I'm going to take us back in time to the start of that, developing that review process. And I'm going to hand it over to these three to talk a little bit more about how that happened and what it was when all of this started. What were you hoping the review process would be like, and how has it met what you expected it would be?
Oh, that's a trick question. You're supposed to ask that.
I was going to say, well, let me make a comment. I think part of it, because I was on the original peer review where we drafted the principles, and yes, it was a very interesting conversation sometimes. We call it our COVID project. I think part of the thing and the goal when we started to do it too is a lot of us are solo. How many of the folks do you have are also looking at the licenses and doing these pieces? I know it's me before it goes to, I do the negotiation, I do the review, I do this, I do that, and then it goes to legal. But so it becomes, that piece of it. So colleagues, in fact, we were talking about this. I had nobody to talk. Who in the world is going to want to listen to me about what I'm trying to do? Most of the time they go, Peggy, you've got 5 minutes. I can't talk to you. And then their eyes roll in the back of their head and they're like, all right, I'm gone. So that was part of the thing. And I think we were trying to basically raise awareness for ourselves and to put it in something where it's like you're having a conversation. To be very honest with you, it has been wonderful because we developed a role and a piece of colleagues. And so now it's like, oh, shoot, I don't have to worry if I'm going to bore everybody half to death. Now I've got somebody that actually listens and talks to me, and I can go, okay, this is driving me crazy. Now what do I do? And Rebecca reels us in about how we're handling it and what we're looking for. Basically, to put the information out there to go, oh, wait a minute. Accessibility. Oh, yeah, we've got all this stuff we've got to do. How are you guys handling it? What do we need to look for? How are we doing this? So it was that type of a conversation, and that's how we started looking at the principles and then passed it forward when the review. So it was like, okay, if we're going to do this, how are we looking at it and being able to apply it in a neutral setting? Okay? I'm coming from UAB. I have health sciences issues on my campus. So I need to make sure I don't look at the contract and think, oh, wait a minute, where's HIPAA? And so it's been an interesting adventure for all of us, to say the least.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't part of the initial development of the 11 principles, so I have a perspective where I felt like I came on board, and this might be a misrepresented perspective, with all these already expert panelists, and I'm like, straight into a review. and the review had a very specific rubric that it had to follow, and then you're reading. So the process is we're given a group team, so maybe 2 or 3 other people that are on the committee will review the same license that you yourself are reviewing. And the license is stripped, so it's anonymous. And you're not sure even what the product necessarily is for, no matter how savvy you are in licensing. So I'll pause there by saying, I've been reading licenses since 2017. I've read every license at the University of Alabama. And Rebecca hands me a license, and I'm like, I have no idea who the vendor is, what the product is, and I have to apply the scope of the 11 principles and overcome any, perhaps maybe like Dunning-Kruger effect, where I'm like, I hope the other 2 people on my panel came to the same conclusion, because I don't want to seem like an outlier when I might mark something. And so that's the first step, I'll say.
And I'll pick it up from there. I was not on the group that actually wrote the 11 principles, but I was on the team that reviewed them before they kind of were released into the wild. I have been part of the team that created the rubric, which was, believe it or not, you might think we had 11 principles and it would be simple. That rubric was not simple to create. It is fascinating to me that, like you, I review all of the licenses, and we get these licenses, and I have no idea what they are. It is also disorienting to review a license without a product in mind. We did get one that was software as a service, and I have never been so confused in all my life, because I don't review software licenses. And I remember I went.
We did that one together.
Yes, we did. I remember I went back to Rebecca, and it was like. So after the individuals in the team review the license separately, we meet and we talk about what we each found, and we come to a consensus. So if we agreed on things, great, we move forward, and we fill out a final rubric. If we have some things where we disagree or we're not sure, we then debate. I thought it would be a lot easier to complete the rubric than it sometimes is. We struggle when licenses are silent on some of these terms, because the rubric is pretty cut and dry. Does it meet it or does it not? Well, it doesn't say. And for some people, that may be a positive, and for other people, that may be a negative. So there are times when certain elements will actually go back to a full committee meeting, where we'll have a broader discussion about what we found, because we want more feedback.
Yes.
Then the final team rubric is created and given to Rebecca. She writes some things up, and she sends it back to the publisher with the comments, and they can do with it as they choose. In terms of the publishers that we have worked with, I think the general idea was that we wanted to do the bigger publishers, because we're trying to put something out there so that librarians can come to the ASERL site, they can look at what we've done, and you can take a really quick look at our assessment, and you can say, so privacy is a huge issue for me, and this license didn't score that well, so I need to focus my time here when I review this license. We're trying to do some of that footwork for you. We're not actually reviewing the license for you, because we are just looking at these 11 things, and some, none, or all of them may be very important to what is important at your institution. So we started with the biggies. Essentially, we created a list, if I'm not mistaken. It's a
Yeah, I was
spreadsheet.
just-
It's a spreadsheet somewhere.
It's funny that she thought that we were starting with the big ones. We started with whoever would give us a
That's
license.
well, and I was gonna get to that, and then we started contacting people, and it was like, well, and it's been mixed. Some people don't want to participate at all. They don't really want that level of scrutiny, I think.
We're also aware that we're not the only project out there right now
Correct,
looking at
true.
licensing language, and so there is some level of like, sure, throw it on the pile. And then there are other folks who are like, this has been done. We don't, this isn't something that I would invest my time in.
Yeah, true enough. How many have we done so far?
7.
7, okay. So we have a hard-fought 7.
So I'll take us back a minute and just talk a little bit more about developing the process that we used. It was important to us, first off, that it not be how do we penalize publishers.
Correct.
We really wanted it to be a collaborative exercise. I think that I come out of a publishing background. I feel like we tend to pit each other against one another a lot, but the goal here really is to better serve the library users with the material that they want. So we wanted it to be a process that was not name and shame, but more, here's the language that we would like to see, and is it in there or not? And to Christy's point, to remain sort of neutral that way.
And I think it's an awareness for both sides, too,
Right.
because there are sometimes in the conversations, even the reviewers, like, oh, I didn't think about that. And as we've gone through the reviews, it's like, oh, I didn't, because also in ASERL, we come from private and public institutions from various states. And we have different laws and different things we have to do in those states and in, depending upon our capacity. So, I think that's been part of the conversation as we've walked through it. Most of the time, it's, okay, wait a minute, I'm not doing this for UAB, I'm doing it for this. And we all walk each other back because we're trying to, and as I say, I think it's an awareness piece. And as I talk to publishers on both sides, and as we do this, it's doing it for, as I say, I'm solo. And I do everything. You name it. If it comes through UAB libraries, I handle it. It does not matter if it's a database or if it's a new kick scanner that's sitting out there. I do it. And so I have to, sometimes it's like you have to do that click in your head and you just want to talk to somebody. Okay, wait a minute. I see this, this, and this. And it's nice to know that a colleague is experiencing the same thing, and we do it, and it's like, okay, good. It's not just me. What have I missed? Where am I going with this? And it's almost comforting. But also, too, to be very honest with you, even talking to colleagues on the publishing side, it's good for them because then they're like, okay, wait a minute. They may not have seen it, or what do we see? And it's like, oh, yeah. We've had that all the time in other schools, and I'm like, oh, good. So it's more of an awareness for all of us, and I think it's that partnership and that collaboration that makes this thing work. We're trying to just basically go, okay, as we do this, I'll be real honest with you. I send an agreement through UAB contracts. Okay, they're like 3 attorneys, okay? I'm a big institution, and I've got health sciences. I don't know how long the agreement's going to take, so if we can figure this stuff out ahead of time, it might actually make the thing go by faster. And I'm not stuck 6 months later trying to get an agreement in.
So Peggy's skipping ahead to lessons learned.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm putting the pin in that one and coming back to the developing the review process. We also, as they've mentioned, so we have a 2-part process where first each license is reviewed by hopefully 3. We've had a couple where I think so far all of them have had 3.
So.
Individual reviewers. So they take the license, they take a little spreadsheet and sit down with it on their own and go through it and see how it evaluates against these things. Then they meet in their little group and say, this is what I found. Does it align with what you found? And I'll let them, when we get to the next slide in a minute, talk about whether or not that process reveals wild differences or wild similarities. And then we do send it back to the publisher for comment. If the publisher responds with comments, we post those on the website along with the review, so it's all available. And again, that's part of that spirit of like, we're not, the goal here is not to punish anyone, it's to have this conversation.
And in hopes to raise awareness with publishers about the common things that libraries are likely going to come to them. And I will say that if a publisher says to me, everybody asks for that, then I'm like, well, then why don't you just change it so that I don't have to read it and ask for it? But I understand. They have their legal departments too.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is that we kind of did this knowing that the contracts that we're looking at, it's a snapshot in time.
Yes.
Every agreement is going to be customized to a particular institution. Every agreement is going to evolve over time. So when we evaluate it, we aren't saying this is the definitive one and only response to this license. We're saying here's the language that we see in there, and here's the language that we would like to see in there that we don't. Now, we've taken too long.
No, you're clicking.
I'm pushing the wrong button.
Big green button.
Yes, okay. Review process key points. So we've kind of hit a lot of these points already, so I'm going to move on to the lessons learned and just sort of ask you, you guys who have been doing this work,
Can I speak on this just for
yes,
a moment?
please.
I would also like to.
Do you want me to go back a slide, or you want to
No,
talk on
this
one?
is
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, you who are
So-
doing this work, tell us about what you've learned from this.
Well, I'm not ready to
Or-
tell you what I've learned, but maybe a challenge, and piggybacking off of what Peggy had said, when we review these licenses, we're doing it from like a neutral standpoint. I'm not doing it for the university that I work for, but as part of the ASERL consortium. But that's very challenging if you're used to having a workflow where you are reviewing licenses, not because you want it to say something specific, but because we're not redlining these licenses. So there's instances where there might be some verbiage, and it's what I like to call weasel words. It's not really clearly defined, but there's something in there. So there might be something about accessibility, but it's not explicit, where in my mind, my first reaction is, oh, just redline that to clarify this one sentence. And there's no way for us to do that in this review process. So if it doesn't say it explicitly, we have to grapple with how we're going to score the rubric. And that's very challenging, I think.
Yeah, and I will say one of the things that I found incredibly interesting and useful is when I review a license, and I'm reviewing it for my institution, I know what our attorneys are looking for. I know what we're looking for in terms of libraries in our community. But when I'm working with other people, it's very interesting to me how we can read the same language and interpret it differently. So the conversations in the small teams around the rubric, somebody will say something and it'll be like, well, I never thought of it like that. So even our discussions are very collaborative. I have not been in a team where we could not come to an agreement. There were, for the most part, we seem to agree on most of the 11. There's always maybe one or two that are sticking, but we talk it out and we come to a consensus about where we want to land on it. But for a long time it was just me doing the licenses. So it's been incredibly enlightening to have other people who do the same work as I do, but maybe see the same thing a little bit differently.
Other things you've learned or thoughts? Would you talk a little bit about this question of when a license doesn't say, when a license is silent? Because we have talked endlessly
It is
about
the
how to
great-
handle this.
It is the greatest struggle when a license is totally silent on something that ASERL 11 wants to know about.
Can I pause? I should actually tell you how this looks on our rubric. For each thing, for each principle, there is meets principal criteria, does not meet principal criteria, partially meets principal criteria, and we've added
Did we add not applicable?
not applicable. Yeah.
Yes, we did
And so
add it.
sometimes,
Yes.
in some categories, when something is silent, some
Not
teams have
applicable.
said, "Oh, it's not applicable because it's silent." Others have said, "Oh, it doesn't meet the language that we want to see
Right.
because the language that we want to see isn't in there."
Right.
So is it not applicable? Is it,
Yes.
I'm talking about it.
Well, no, it's good. I think, one, I'm going to spark Christy's mind here because we did the software as a service. And if I remember correctly, we really grappled with author rights because we didn't think that we were reviewing anything that was a journal package, but we weren't really sure.
It had some weird words in there about databases and journals and a bizarre,
And some
intro,
ebooks.
and ebooks and an intro, and we were like, what?
It was-
We did struggle with that one.
yeah.
I was going to say, and then the question too is, all right, I may want to be silent on state governing law.
Right,
What about accessibility?
right.
And that was the big one that hit us. Do we want to be silent on that? I don't, and it was like, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, and there was also the debate about whether silence does not meet,
Right.
Right.
right?
And the thing that surprised me in that, because we had been like, we can add a category that says, license does not say or language not included or something. They're like, but sometimes that's good.
Right,
Sometimes it's bad.
right.
And so how to fit that into just sort of a drop-down category has been really a puzzle.
It has. It has. And I think we still just take it on a case-by-case basis, and I still think that those are the cases that come back to the larger committee for final review.
Well, I was going to say, and we have brought back several on those things because
have.
we've looked at it, and a lot of it is, well, do we really want to do it? And it's like, I don't know. Well, I've looked at it, as you say, we look at it from different perspectives, and part of it is, I think, where we sit in geographically, because
True.
my state may have it and view it differently than someone else's state, and it's just the way we look at it and how our teams handle it once it leaves our hands. But it's been an interesting conversation, and I know sometimes to be very honest with you, it hasn't been resolved. We're still working through it. I think one of the lessons that we have all come to is that there is no, this is it, okay? It's a project, we finished it, let's keep on rolling. It is, and I hate this term, organic.
It is.
Okay?
It is.
I know everybody seems to be using that all the time, but the point of it is it grows, and then we come up with other things, and there are other pieces on it. When we did the 11 principles, AI, it's like, what? We did some on data, but I'll be real honest with you. Data's gone, now I have to look at data storage and how can I meet the grants, and I have to do the specific deposit. None of that was thought of when we looked at this post-COVID.
That kind of leads us into our next slide.
Oh,
which
I'm
is,
sorry.
What do y'all see as the next steps for ASERL
Oh.
11?
Perhaps reviewing something
Yeah.
for AI, whether or not the content can, whether or not users can apply an AI agenic tool to the text for text and data mining.
I will take one step further back, and I will just say that I think that the 11 principles have to continue to evolve with the changing landscape of technology and our resources and our licenses. I think one of the challenges for the committee is going to be to craft principle language that lands where most libraries want to land, because right now some libraries don't want it to say anything about AI because they feel like that leaves them the largesse to do something and have questions asked later, right? Whoops, sorry. And others want it nailed down. But I definitely think that the principles and terms have to be a living document, just like licensing in the real world is a living, breathing process. We don't have anything currently about the ADA, Title II, which is definitely going to have to be addressed. We have started work reviewing Principle 1, which is accessibility. I suspect that's now going to take a lot longer.
We might just move on to principle 2.
Yeah, we might have to author
back
that too,
around on
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So we'll just take another couple of minutes to wrap up here, and then we'll open it up for some questions. I will say another thing that I think that we're going to do in the future, listening to them, this piece of, we expected it just to be a simple, I foolishly expected it to be a simple, straightforward project of looking at the licenses. But it's become a lot more than that, and this piece of them feeling that they're growing in their capacity as license reviewers for their own use and in their institutional use is something that I was really really excited to hear about. So we're talking about opening up a licensing hour where we can have a semi-closed space where people can come in and say, I'm grappling with what my institution wants the language in a license to be for AI, or something not a specific like what did you guys do on the X license or something, but more of a general kind of this process of looking at sort of the language that folks want to see. We would like to continue sourcing more licenses to review and continuing this process, and revising those things. Now, a moment that I suspect some of you have been waiting for is, what have we found so far? And we did go ahead. The licenses are all available on our website. There will be a QR code on the next slide, but we went ahead and anonymized this because, again, the point was not to be like, oh, big red X for this, but you'll see there are entire categories. Accessibility, not one of the licenses we reviewed, met the language that people wanted to see there. And otherwise, real mixed bag. And there are some of them that the team of reviewers has said, even out of the 7 that we've already done, it's time to go back and redo that because we did it when we were first starting out, and I think we would review it differently now. So we're going to continue looking at these on a rolling cycle. And I will go ahead and put our QR code up if you want to link to those reviews, and we'll open it up to some questions for the folks. Anybody?